Hello and welcome to Workshop number 1, Jumpstart the Science Fair. This video is to help prepare your students to begin this wonderful journey called the Science Fair. Even though the Science Fair is not until February, I am so proud of you wanting to tune in and get the latest information as well as tips and resources to help you get a successful start. Now, the Science Fair is several months away. However, there are many advantages to beginning over the summer. Even if your child just selects their topic or begins thinking about their topic, they'll enter the new school year ahead of the game and ready to jump right into 7th or 8th grade. Now, this workshop will go over a few things. It'll talk about what is a science fair, what are the requirements of the science fair, and then we'll hone in specifically on how to begin selecting your project question. So this video will be a combination of me talking to you like this, as well as me doing a tutorial to show you some of our online resources. I've also created a PowerPoint, which is in this wiki. So be sure to watch that. That is the PowerPoint I showed during my workshop, and it'll have many of the same information and tips that I'm going to provide you in this video. So first, what is a science fair? Well, a science fair is an opportunity for your child to be a scientist. Scientists follow certain steps when they're doing their investigations. First, they select a project question, a problem that they're trying to investigate. The second thing they do is they research what else has been done on that topic, what do they need to know to run their experiment. This is the research phase, also called the review of literature, where they're looking at other articles and talking to experts to find out as much as they can about their topic. After they've done their research and written their research paper, students will then come up with a hypothesis. A hypothesis is an educated guess, which is why it comes after writing their research paper. So then they guess what they think will happen when they run their experiment. And then it's the fun part. They get to actually do their experiment. Their experiment will have variables. One variable is the variable they'll change, which is called the independent variable. And then they're measuring a variable, and that's called the dependent variable. So when your child is beginning to think about their project, they need to have an experiment where there's data generated. So when they run their experiment, they'll do it several times. These are called trials, and then they'll generate data. This data will then be collected and then analyzed, and that's called the conclusion phase of your science fair project. At the conclusion phase, they look at their data, they look back at their hypothesis, were they right or were they wrong? And then finally they make the recommendations. Now recommendations, I find an important part of this whole process. It's when they analyze what went right, what went wrong with their experiment, how would they change it, how would they make it better, how would they tweak it or improve it for a future science fair project. And then lastly, they present their findings, and that's the science fair itself in February. So those steps are the steps of the scientific method, and those are the steps your child will be following throughout this entire process. Now, the science fair is assigned no longer in language arts. It is now going to be assigned in science. In the years past, it's been in language arts, but because we're rewriting things, it's going to be now assigned in science. It'll begin midway through Packet 1, where they will be selecting their topics. By conference, they need to have their topic selected. And then in Unit 2, they will be writing the review of literature. So that'll be pretty much entirely Unit 2. In Unit 3, they will be doing everything else, their experiment, their data, their conclusion recommendations, and preparing for their presentation. So it is guided for you, assigned in the units. There is a handbook that'll become very important to your family over the next few months. The Science Fair Handbook tells you exactly what to do for your science fair project step by step. So it's really important that you access that, you print it out, you give it to your child, and you read it through together so you know exactly what's expected. There are no surprises with science fair. Everything is laid out right now. You can see the grading rubrics the judges will be using. You can see the handbook. You can see the forms and paperwork you need, and then examples of the science fair as well. All those are found on the TCA Science Source Science Fair Wiki. So in a little bit I'll show you that. And then you'll be able to access all those materials right now, so you know what's coming. Also assigned in science will be the review of literature. So that will no longer be assigned in language arts. It will be assigned entirely in the science unit. Another change from last year is that science fair will now be 2 days, not just 1 day. So it'll be February 4th and February 5th. Now you don't have to present both days. You just present 1 day, and you get to select your time using Sign Up Genius. So that's kind of a change from things that we've done in the past. Now, what is due on February 4th and February 5th? What exactly does my child need to complete to get a good grade on February 4th and 5th? Well, the first thing you need, very important, is a daily log. So immediately, like today, go out and buy a composition book like this or a notebook, and this is your rough draft for your child. This is where they write their handwritten notes. This is the child's question and so forth. So this is very important. This is done in real science. Before I became a teacher, I was a soil analyst in a lab, and we actually had composition books just like this at every station. And as different scientists worked on projects, we recorded what we did in a daily log. So this is real science. Your judge will be looking for this. In the handbook, it'll say, do this, write this down in your daily log, and then type it for the next part, which is the notebook. So your judge will want to see a notebook like this. This is a collection of all their work. It's their problem, it's their research, it's their hypothesis, it's their experiment written out in words, their data tables, their graphs, and so forth. So that's all typed and made pretty and put into a notebook. So your child has a daily log, which is the rough draft. They have the notebook, which is the typed, cleaned up copy. And then, of course, there's the display, which is one's behind me, and I'll see if I can grab this one. So a display, it can be a board, a good old-fashioned traditional science fair display board with the trifold, or they can do a digital display. Now, this last year, we had over 100 science fair projects. Only about, actually we had 110. 90 students chose to do a traditional display, and 20 students chose to do digital displays. So digital is a wonderful option if your child likes that. They can do a video, or they can do some sort of slide presentation. Don't worry about that right now. The presentation preparations come in January, so no need to worry about that. So what do you need to worry about? The topic. This is a big deal. Sometimes it's the hardest part of the entire science fair project, is deciding on what your child will be studying. Now, let me give you a few tips on this. First, it has to be a fair test experiment, which means it has to be an experiment that has measurable data. It has to have variables. It can't be a book report. It can't be a survey. It can't be a taste test. It needs to have something you change and then an effect you're observing. So, for example, would studying black holes be a good topic for a science fair? No. Unless your child can get to a black hole and study it, that would not be a good project. That's more like a research paper. Would testing different fertilizers on a variety of plants to see which one produces the most fruit, now that is a valuable appropriate science fair project. Why? Because I have a variable I'm changing, which is the type of fertilizer, and I have a variable I'm measuring, which is the amount of fruit, something I'm counting. So your experiment needs to have something with measurable data. It means you're using a ruler, a stopwatch, counting, measuring, taking blood pressure. You need numbers of some sort. If you're not generating numbers, it's not a fair test experiment and won't be a good topic for your assignment. The PowerPoint and the handbook give much more examples of what's a good experiment, what might not be a good experiment. Also, you want to take into account your budget, your time, and your ability. Don't pick a project that's too difficult. Don't pick a project that's too easy. And make sure it's something your family can afford and that you have the time for. If you know that you only have a week to experiment and you pick to study plants, that might not be a good fit for your time frame. So be sure it's an experiment that you can fit in terms of your time. Lastly, the biggest tip, and I'm talking now to moms and to dads, oftentimes it's tempting to tell your child what to do. Hey, why don't you do plants? I love plants. I have a garden. Why don't you do electricity? Because dad's an electrician. Why don't you do cooking? Because we all love cooking as a family. And your child, if they're not excited about it, if it's not their project, if they don't own it, it's going to be an awful 4 months for you. let your child pick a topic that they're passionate about, even if you're not. So for example, if your child really, really, really wants to study human anatomy, wants to do something perhaps with exercise and blood pressure, and you don't know anything about that, do not know how to take blood pressure, do not know anything about human anatomy, let your child do human anatomy, because if they're passionate, if they're excited, it's going to be a much better 4 months than if they're dragging their feet doing a topic that you picked, not them. So that's my biggest advice is to allow your child to pick a topic that they're passionate about. It'll really help make everything go much more smoother and help your child to really have an enriching experience. Now, how to pick a topic, there's several tips. First, go to my wiki. On my wiki, I will have lots of support videos, the handbook is there, sample projects for you to start getting ideas. The second tip is to go to sciencebuddies.org. Science Buddies is a fantastic site. It has something called the topic selection wizard. So if your child has no idea what they want to do at all, they can take this little quiz. It'll take them through about 20 questions, and it will try to determine your child's interests, and then it'll generate projects that they think will match your child's interests. And what's cool about these projects is that it tells you exactly everything you need to know to do your project successfully. It'll tell you how much it'll cost, the time frame involved. It'll talk about the difficulty level. It'll talk about what you need to buy, how you need to build it, how to set up your data table, how to do your experiment, how to build a contraption if you have to build a contraption. It gives you everything you need. So the Topic Selection Wizard, Science Buddies, is a great place to start. Now let's say your child already knows what they want to do, kind of. They know they like chemistry, or they know they like animals. Well, they can go on Science Buddies and look at the project index. That now lists them by subject: chemistry, physical science, engineering, and so forth. And you can pick projects that way if you already have a certain field of science your child's passionate about. The third thing is, of course, to think about who you have in your life that are experts. I definitely strongly encourage children to work with a mentor or work with a scientist. If you know a biochemist, if you know an electrician, if you know a roofer, if you know someone who does windows, if you know someone who does insulation, all those people could become experts to help you with your project. So that's something to keep in mind as you're thinking about your project. Who do you already know that could help you? So I'm going to switch now to a little tutorial where I'm going to show you some of these sites I've mentioned: my wiki, the handbook, as well as Science Buddies. So good luck with your project. I am available through most of the summer, so email me if you have questions. Oh, and most importantly, if you decide to begin your experiment early over the summer, you must turn into me a topic and safety form. It's found on the wiki and in the handbook. I need that signed initial form before you begin experimenting. I would not recommend experimenting over the summer much. If you want to have your child pick their topic, do a little research so they know enough about their topic to conduct the experiment, then I'm fine with that. But that research part is very important, and I don't want you to write your whole paper over the summer. But if you do enough research and reading so your child is confident, you can go ahead and begin some experimenting over the summer. But the summer, your goal really should be picking your topic, thinking about it, looking at some of these sites, talking with your child, having them look through the handbook, and just become educated so in the fall they'll already know what they're doing and the direction they're heading. So let me go ahead and tune out and put on my tutorial so you can see some of these websites.